Dr. Booth's Great Debate. When I was really young, like when I was doing this all the time and I didn't really know entirely what I was doing, I was in my early 20s, I used to participate in a web forum called the Mercedes Benz Club of America forum. And this is probably when it was a thing, it was the best Mercedes forum on the web. And I think my buddy Skip, who's up in Connecticut, I think Skip is still tuned into this channel. That's how I met Skip and some other people that I've kept in touch with a little bit over the years. There were all the guys that actually, what I didn't understand is how people, as I got busy, or how they had so much time to post in a web forum. But then I learned that software jobs allow people to keep a web forum open and post stuff while they're waiting for their work to show up on their desk or in their computer or whatever. So I figured that a lot of these guys were software engineers, or they just had a lot of downtime, which I don't have so much anymore. But there was one guy who posted on the forum, and he was such an impersonal guy, but he was so knowledgeable. His name was Dr. Marshall Booth. And Dr. Booth contracted, unfortunately, I think around 2008 or 2006, maybe it was 2008 or 2009, I can't remember. Dr. Booth contracted a really strange type of eye cancer that metastasized and spread to his brain and killed him. And so it's quite unfortunate because he was a really good doctor. But he had this real fetish for the OM 601, 602, and 603 engines, particularly the 601. And the debate was always, was the 601 engine better than the 616 or 617 engine? And so he and I used to debate about this stuff here and there, but of course I was too young and inarticulate. And some of you might even remember that I could not type very well back then, and I still can't type very well. Never been able to type well. I've never had great handwriting unless I do everything slowly. And I think that I looked kind of like an idiot debating with Dr. Booth because I didn't have the ability to express myself articulately using a keyboard. But I thought this was really interesting because I still find myself comparing the 240D, which was the entry-level 123 series, and the 190D 2.2, which was the entry-level 201 series. So for starters, there are way more 240Ds out there, whether they're 115s or 123s, than 201 series 190D 2.2s. Booth insisted that the 190D 2.2 was the better car. He thought it was better because it got better fuel economy. He believed that engine longevity was just as good as the 616, if not better. And he liked the efficiency and lightness of the chassis. He liked the fact that the 2.2 liter 190D could be had with a 5-speed, whereas in the United States the 240D was strictly a 4-speed car unless you wanted an automatic. This is one of the biggest tragedies that Mercedes committed, I think, not selling the 300D non-turbo and the 240D in the United States with a 5-speed manual. I still don't understand why Mercedes didn't do this. They could have sold even more cars that have been much better drivers in the highway too. So I wish somebody at Mercedes would answer the question why these guys were so boneheaded and didn't just give people the option of a 5-speed, or didn't just make the 5-speed the standard transmission. I think they misperceived at the time what Americans wanted. So Dr. Booth was right in that the driveline and gearing of the 190D 2.2 was superior because of the 5-speed with overdrive. I think where he neglected to really discuss things in an honest manner was the durability of the 201 chassis, particularly early examples compared to the 123. I have an older 201. My wife and I have a 190E 2.3, and Thomas had an 86 190D 2.5. They're not that durable. I know on both cars dashboards crack, but a dashboard crack is one thing. All the plastic on your dashboard blowing up in your face where all the vents are is another thing. Ditto for serviceability of the interior. On the 190D or 190E, you can barely remove a door panel without damaging it because it's made of cardboard. On the 123, the door panel snaps on and off like a real door panel. If you look at items like window regulators or interior plastic trim, the window regulators, particularly the rear ones on the 123, are not great, but they can be improved with 126 regulators. On the 201, they just lock up and don't do anything, and they're very lightweight, and I hate to say it, you can't save even the motor. You have to throw the whole thing away. So I think that Booth may have been right that the 601 engine was kind of close. The 602 non-turbo 5-cylinder was probably the best of the aluminum head engines other than the 606. But then when you get to the 603 turbo diesel, which honestly I think Dr. Booth was overly... I think he neglected to discuss and examine some of the known issues with the 603 turbo diesel. I think that's where the rubber meets the road. So when you compare the 603 and the 617 turbo diesel, the 603 turbo diesel has a history of cylinder head failures, and because they were boosted to 148 horsepower, they had a tendency to wear out cylinder liners more unless you were religious about oil changes. That's why I tell everybody who has a 603 turbo diesel, change your oil at 2,000 miles, And my really good friend Keith Holstead, who, Keith had a 350 SD and always took really great care of the 350 SD. He was the one who actually discovered that if you change the oil at around 1,500 miles, the cars would run so much better and they wouldn't use oil. And so credit to you, Keith, if you're watching this, because that's the advice I give everybody with the 603 engine now. Change the oil early. Who cares about the cost of oil? Wait till you see the cost of rebuilding an engine. The 602 turbo diesel was somewhat better, but it wasn't that much better. But a couple of things Dr. Booth did say was that most 617 engines are retired with their original head gaskets, and they don't wear out either. They do wear out, and if you crack a head, you're going to need a head gasket too. But he did have a point. The cylinder head failures in 617 engines were extremely rare, and most of those cars were retired even with extremely high mileage before the engines were ever opened up, and they were probably still running. One of the issues that I think Dr. Booth really neglected to discuss, though, is what happens to the internals of a 603 engine, whether it's a 3-liter or 3.5 liter. And as I've gone on and acquired more knowledge, I realize now that the 617 is the more, I think, reliable engine. Despite the fact that both engines achieve similar fuel economy, I actually think the 617, when it's tuned properly and everything's in 100% working order, is slightly more efficient than the 603 engine because it only has 5 cylinders instead of 6. But I just wanted to, some of you who have been MBCA members for a long time remember Dr. Booth, and I always remember him, and I think that it's good that he introduced some of us to these more obscure Mercedes models and made a case for them, and I think that's the valuable part. That's why when somebody shows up here with a 190D 2.2, I realize that the car is a much better car than meets the eye. It may not be better than the 123 series diesels or the 126 or 116 series diesels, but the cars do deserve a chance, and they do serve people reliably, like our friend Thomas did for years with his 190D 2.5. And that is a merit that I can't say enough good things about. The cars are extremely reliable, and they don't require nearly as much maintenance as the 617 or 616 engines do in terms of valve adjustments and oil changes and belt services. But they still have their weak points, especially in the cars that they were installed in. So thank you, Dr. Booth, for all the knowledge you gave us over the years. And thank you guys who are supporting us on Patreon. And if you're new to this channel, please think about subscribing. Also, if you're going to go to Amelia Island, now's the time to start letting us know so I could see you guys there. And I'd love to meet with some of you and hear all about your Mercedes and what you're doing with them, or the Mercedes that you wish you owned. So remember, I'm here to listen to you guys and even answer your questions in person. I'm really excited to run into some of you at the upcoming Amelia Island event. See you in the future.